With Wicked being around the corner, I decided to take a look back at the original Wizard of Oz, the beloved classic that everybody knows, a movie that has been referenced and parodied to death at this point. And just like anything, time will uncover its horrible fates. From the 100% pure asbestos snow to a multitude of other production problems and accidents, here's what happened to the Wizard of Oz cast, just the main cast. Now, not to crap on the Wizard of Oz too much, but a lot of safety regulations have happened since. Like, on Gene Wilde's Willy Wonka, the soap they used was real soap instead of like prop soap. So the whole cast also got irritation. So it's not just like this movie was just really bad, we just didn't know any better. Hello everyone, Ren here, or Alias. And let's start with a man who didn't actually make it to the final film. Buddy Ebsen. He was the original Tin Man before the Tin Man got replaced. And the reason he got replaced was because he got a severe allergic reaction to the makeup they used. You imagine, this film came out in 1939. People weren't too conscious about the stuff there was. Lead was still in gasoline at this point. And the Tin Man's main paint component that gave him that shiny glow was aluminum dust, which is really bad if you inhale it. It can lead to lung scarring, coughing, and other respiratory issues. Now, he was hospitalized and dropped out of the project from how bad it was. And they remade the paint for the guy that replaced him, Jack Haley. But they kept the aluminum dust, but they just made it into a paste so it wouldn't puff into the air. Which is better, but it's like saying, oh, don't worry, we removed most of the asbestos from the building. It's still something you don't want on your skin. And hey, this massive opportunity that was lost, that must have sucked at the time, might have been a blessing in disguise. Cause Buddy Ebsen outlived Jack Haley by a long shot. Now, Jack was older by around 10 years. But Buddy passed away in 2003, and Jack passed away in 1979. Well over 10 years. Well over, like, a bigger age gap. Now, let's move on to the Cowardly Lion. There's an H in the middle. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm gonna go with Lar. His costume was apparently made out of a real lion pelt. And if you ever worn a real pelt from an animal, none of that like fake stuff, they're really heavy. And all of his makeup and the pelts and the whole costume made it weigh around 100 pounds. Which is insane to just be carrying around for all the stunts he was doing. He also had an allergic reaction to the fur. His skin would often crack from it and he would get rashes. Not only that, fur is really hot, that's why you wear it on coats. And dancing and jumping around makes you sweat. His paint for the makeup was grease paint, and grease paint clogs up your face, making it even hotter. So he would suffer heat syncopes and other heat-related issues throughout filming. And now the Scarecrow, Ray Bolger. He got similar problems to the Cowardly Lion, which was his costume. It was made of burlap. And if you ever had a burlap sack for a potato sack race, you know that is extremely itchy. His costume was also very stiff, so very stiff. Again, if you felt burlap, when you fold it, it like cracks on the folds. And his face paint for the makeup was also grease paint, because that's what they used at the time. So it was even hotter. You can imagine wearing a heavy burlap costume with grease paint on your face, while you have to dance around like he did when he did his Brain song. It is absolutely torturous. But out of the main cast, honestly, those two got it off the easiest. Like, yeah, they had problems with their costumes. They did suffer. But it wasn't something life-threatening. I mean, there's the asbestos now, but everybody suffered on that. But, you know, once they got the paint off and the sack off, there wasn't really too long-lasting effects. But now, let's get to our antagonist, the Wicked Witch of the West. Good old, our protagonist of Wicked. And from looking at her, And from what we know, like they use a metal for the Tin Man, aluminum dust. And what metal turns green? That's right, copper, like the Statue of Liberty. Her makeup had copper compounds in it. And just like aluminum, copper is toxic to the body to a certain degree. Like, yeah, there's IUDs and medical devices that use copper. But copper to that obscene amount of like on your skin might cause copper poisoning. And if you're unlucky enough, she could have been allergic to copper just like Buddy was allergic to aluminum. But luckily, she wasn't. She had some like bad reactions to the copper every now and then, like rashes, but nothing to the extent of Buddy that had to be hospitalized from the aluminum dust. Now, she did have an accident on set. She was set on fire. So there's a scene where she is supposed to go on a puff of smoke and disappear from the scene. And the way they did this was they would use pyrotechnics for the smoke, and a trapdoor will open on her feet, and she would fall to her safety, and the smoke would just like cover her. But when they shot the scene, the trapdoor malfunctioned, so she got hit by a fireball on set, which lit her makeup up because I think it had an oil base on top of the copper base, and lit her costume up. She suffered third-degree burns. She was rushed to the hospital, but luckily, she made a full recovery. And she wasn't even disfigured or anything like that. Like, she had some scars, but, nothing too life-altering, luckily. And after that, they had a stunt double do some scenes, because they didn't want to risk it again, of course. Who would want to risk that? And now we go to the most tragic story. Dorothy, or Judy Garland, the little girl that played Dorothy. Now, you should look into her life. Her story alone could make a whole video on itself. It is very tragic. But I'm just gonna focus on what happened in the movie set. So, she started filming The Wizard of Oz when she was 16. She was very inexperienced compared to her co-stars. Like, yeah, she sang and stuff like that when she was young, but, her co-stars were all, seasoned actors at this point. And they were used to the really long hours and the really harsh working conditions. Like, the Scarecrow, he apparently, even though he was in hell in his costume, he always kept everybody cheered up, like outside the set, from anecdotes I read. And not only that, MGM wanted her to stay the same weight throughout the whole production. Production of the movie took from October of 1938 to March of 1939. Now granted, all of that production wasn't acting. There was the songs being recorded, there was post-production and stuff like that. But around 6 months, let's see. She had to stay the same way. You may think, oh, that's easy, I can do that. A lot of people can do that. And movies tend to do that. An actor has to stay a certain amount of weight throughout the whole production. We even have actors like Joaquin Phoenix in the original Joker. He had to be really skinny the whole production time. Every time actors say they have to stay a certain underweight, they always say how hard it is, because it is a really hard thing to do, to be that skinny. And back in the day, girls had to be really skinny, and they wanted her to stay so skinny to the point that they gave her diet pills to quench her appetite. And of course, she got to be cheery and smiley for the production. It's a happy movie. But if you're not eating, you're not really energetic. So they gave her amphetamines to keep her energy levels up. It is insane. Like, they were literally drugging this teenager just so she could perform her role. Absolute insanity. And just like her co-stars, her costume was also problematic. Now, you may look at it and say, what's problematic about this? This is just like an old-timey girl dress. It should weigh like a fucking pound 50. But, but apparently, it was very layered to give it that puffy look. She had to wear a super tight corset around her waist so she would look the part. And it was tight to the point that she had trouble breathing during set, which, you know, if you need to sing, if you need to move around, that's gonna cause problems. And the iconic ruby slippers, the most valuable Hollywood prop of all time, even though they don't have real rubies in it, were extremely uncomfortable to wear. Even though they were custom made for her feet, like the cobbler fucked up or something. Because they were apparently very stiff and they didn't bend. If your shoe doesn't bend, it's gonna dig into the back of your heel every time you twist. It is extremely uncomfortable. And I've had shoes that have done that to the point that I had to put tape at the back on my heels tendon so I wouldn't get a cut. The sole was also not thick. It was a thin leather sole that didn't bend. So when she was walking around, any pebble or anything on the ground would like push on her foot and be uncomfortable, basically like walking barefoot. And when shooting was done, her mental health took a massive toll. You should look up how her life unraveled afterwards. Even though she was one of the younger people in the cast, she died before everybody in the main cast. She was 16 at the time, and everybody else was well into their adulthood. And that's a topic for another day, because that should be thoroughly explored properly. It is insane how far we've come in production from all these protections in Hollywood. And yes, Hollywood is bad and it is evil. It is very exploitative to upcoming actors, male or female, and especially young actors. It is a horrible industry. But at least we can say is that things have gone a lot safer since then. There's still problems, but at least there's a lot less. And hey, this has been all. This has been Ren, or Alias. Bye bye.